All right, welcome back. Day 2 in my fancy new garage. I got to tell you, kind of like it in here. People said, well, we're going to stick him back in the corner. I said, you can stick me back in the corner if you make it into a garage. Now we're going to try and fix everything. We'll see how it goes. Today, talking about real solutions to the energy crisis facing this country. This one couldn't be more apparent, I'm sure, to every last one of you and all of us. In the Gulf oil disaster, of course, if nothing, it teaches us that relying on offshore drilling, relying on traditional fossil fuel as it stands right now is simply not sustainable and works to the direct potential future diminishment, if not meaningful destruction to portions of our country. Not only is it grossly inefficient and expensive, as we saw on April 20th, it's deadly. For years, you, me, people long before we ever showed up and talked about this, have heard so much talk about getting off of big oil. Go back to Nixon, every president, I'm going to get you off of oil. And the list of alternatives, of course, is a long one. From fossil fuel here, natural gas obviously in this one, all the fossil fuels. You hear a lot of solar talk. You pick your favorite thing. I'll go all the way down to biofuels. But what if I told you that there's actually something we can do right now without waiting for the president or the Congress or some grand plan to deal with all these alternatives? Something that you and I could do right now, something that our president and our Congress could lead us to do today, that would change not only the way our country uses energy, but that would change our national security and change the nature and the flow of investment of money in our own country. I want you to think about a very simple act, turning on a light to read the newspaper, or in this case I'll read these notes for T. Boone Pickens, who's going to be here for a minute. Now, the problem, as I turn my light on, is that the average utility in our country provides electricity at only a 34% efficiency rate. What does that mean? That means for every 10 gallons of heating oil, for every 10 tons of coal, for every 10 gallons of gas in your car, 2/3 of that gas, coal, heating oil, whatever it is that you've paid for, you've bought, you put it in there, doesn't go to do anything other than burn off into the atmosphere. Wasted in lost heat off of cars, houses, the power grid, power generation facilities. Why aren't we all using something a little bit more like this? Not just in our homes, but on our power grids, on our power generation facilities, on our automobiles, and down the line. No matter what we do to source our energy, efficiency is the fastest way to begin addressing the actual energy problem. You want to kill a terrorist? Turn off the light in the room you're not in. Do that over and over a few times. All of a sudden, you're sending less money to the Middle East. Consider that along with the fact that the United States only accounts for 5% of the population, you've heard this, and we consume 1/4 of the world's oil. But of the oil we're consuming, 2/3 of it we're burning off in waste out of our cars, houses, power grid, you pick it. It's like going into the woods and burning down a tree for fun. Why would you do that, especially at a time when the population is exploding? Look at the Gulf of Mexico. Meanwhile, our counterparts in Europe and Asia have found many ways to end this reckless consumption. Europeans using a process called combined heat and power. That, a proven game changer, statistically, bio or natural gas. I don't care if you're at this end or at this end. Those fuels are burned, and the heat that they provide ultimately is captured and recycled, and excess heat continues to go through at an efficiency rate of 80%. We're at 34%. Meanwhile, in Asia, Japan, in their factories, same thing. They want to reduce their costs. Using similar technology, they get 90% efficiency out of the energy that they consume, because they know that heat loss like that is absolutely disastrous, whether you're down here at the fossil fuel end or over here putting fryer grease in your car. You can see T. Boone Pickens is there. Boone, how are you? Nice to see you.
Good.
I'm going to stop talking and let you start talking. And before we get into this, can we talk about the Gulf of Mexico briefly?
Sure, let's go.
Will the relief well stop this thing? And is that knowable?
This has a good chance, but it's not a cinch.
If it doesn't work, do we have other alternatives?
Well, I think the second relief well will be in position. I suspect this what happens. You're going to go in there and you'll try to kill it with 14.4-pound mud. And if that's successful, then you can pump cement behind it, and then you can kill it with the cement. If that fails, then you're going to come in with the second relief well, and you're going to now we're going to pump on it from two different.
Once you have two hoses, basically, you can generate enough force.
Well,
that
what you're going to do is they're only, oh, I don't know, 120 feet away from the vertical blowout hole now.
Yeah.
So they're going to come in and then they'll take it down parallel to the.
So worst case scenario, how long before this thing is capped in your mind?
Oh, don't say.
Not that I'm going to make you bet on it.
Well, no, don't say worst case, because worst case could really take you some time. So, but I'm going to guess that if you get it done by the middle of September, I'm going to be happy.
Okay, let's talk about this board in front of us. I've got a few,
I like it.
It's good, right?
Yeah, it's good.
So I've got a few guests here.
It's all American, isn't it?
Oh, it's all American.
Okay.
I mean, even these little boxes, and this lumber's American. This is American wood.
That's good.
Okay.
No OPEC stuff here.
Nothing here. Nothing from the Middle East. None of that funny money. Okay.
Yeah,
This is legitimate business right here. I got a gentleman from the X Prize coming up to talk about incentives. We're going to talk about heat capture in a minute. But before we get to that, you're one of the most prominent presenters of a sourcing plan for energy in this country, period. When you look at this menu, from biofuels to fossil fuels, how do you reach the sourcing plan that you've presented, which I know relies largely on natural gas, but not exclusively?
Okay, what I want the president to do is to do an executive order that all federal vehicles purchased in the future will be on domestic fuel. Real simple. Mm-hmm. It can be battery,
we can see the choices.
Ethanol, anything, I don't care. Domestic fuel. Second, that sends a message. That's 200,000 vehicles a year, not anything big. Second message I want to hear is for him to say that when I was nominated, I told you in 10 years we would not import any oil from the Mideast. And 2 years have passed. Now I have a plan to accomplish that. This is the plan. You in America, all of us, has nothing to do with political parties or anything else. That in 8 years, all of us will have to select our fuel for our vehicles, and we will be on domestic fuel. It will be either battery, hybrid, natural gas, ethanol, butane, propane. You'll have choices, and you'll have time to make the decision.
One thing that came up, and I had a conversation with James Woolsey in preparation for this.
That's a guy that knows.
Is a guy who knows.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he discussed with me in that conversation was the fact that there's a $40 or $50 part that's a gas line in the automobiles that prevents them from being able to be used for flex fuel. Brazil has mandated a change in this gas line. I asked him, I don't know if we have the sound, but I asked the former CIA director why it is that $40 or $50 part in our automobiles so that we could have flex fuel to take everything Mr. Pickens is discussing into any car in America hasn't been changed. Here's what Mr. Woolsey had to say about that.
They've grown up together and they have relationships that it's very hard to break. I don't know why the plastic in the fuel line of automobiles will only operate with gasoline and maybe 10 or 15% ethanol, why they can't work with ethanol or methanol or other fuels. But that's a relationship that's grown up between the automobile companies and the oil companies over the years, and nobody interferes with it.
Do you think we can change all these things, whether it's I don't even care about intent, whether it's malicious intent, inadvertent intent, self-preservation, whatever it is, you and I both know we have to push our way through it.
We have to. I mean, we've got to get off the OPEC oil. But I had a meeting yesterday with Ed Whitaker, CEO of General Motors, and it was an hour-and-a-half meeting. I met later in the day with Alan Mulally with Ford CEO, and Alan and Ed said basically the same thing.
Flex fuels are coming.
Well, they said they're ready to work on domestic fuel. That's fine with them. They think it's a good idea. They fully understand. And these guys know what they're talking about.
Yeah, no, I know. I want to bring in another man or two that know what they're talking about. Peter Diamandis, founder of the X Prize Foundation, which offers prizes for innovative energy solutions, some of the things that you see on the board in front of Boone and myself. Also, Thomas Kasten, chairman of Recycled Energy Development. And Mr. Kasten, if I could, I'd like to begin with you, because I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about sourcing our energy in this country, understandably so, but I didn't realize how phenomenally inefficient our power generation, our power grid, our automobiles, our houses are, basically leading us to burn 2/3 of the energy we burn wherever it comes from, and it just radiates back into outer space. The Europeans don't do this. The Asians do not do this. How do we stop the American culture from being so happy to burn energy that it really can't afford to waste?
We really need to understand that the issue is our utility and regulatory system. Utilities got to 34% efficiency when Eisenhower was in the White House. they're still at the same level today. We throw away 2/3 of the energy, and it causes many of the problems that we have. People think it's the best of all worlds, and if we do anything to change it, it'll raise the cost. In fact, it lowers the cost. So what do? You build power plants where you can recycle the heat the way Edison did. When Edison built his first generating plant in New York, he took the heat, and instead of throwing it away, he heated nearby buildings. We don't reward the utilities for efficiency. We protect them from competition. They don't have any reason to become more efficient, and it's destroying the American economy. We are so wasteful.
So specifically, so I want to stop you there, because I think this is an incredible. I can't think of a more important point than the efficiency point, which sort of brings me to the nagging grandmother. You know, we need somebody telling you to close the refrigerator and turn off the lights in the room you're not in. But if you were to point toward either the system itself or the government's creation of the system, what is the leverage point that somebody like myself, who has a flashlight and a microphone, or a viewer who may want to express themselves directly, where is the leverage point? Where do we apply the pressure so that we can get out of this insanity?
We need to everybody understand that efficiency has to be the fuel of the future. We've got to, you mentioned the things that people have tried. Not in the list is the market. Utilities are monopoly protected. We've got to open that up to the market. Yeah. We have regulatory requirements by the Environmental Protection that penalize efficiency, don't reward it. We need to remove them. The president needs to sit down and say, let me look at all the laws that are creating barriers to efficiency or denying incentives and fix them. And we will, well, Oak Ridge, the DOE said that we could invest about $250 billion, generate 20% of our energy with combined heat and power, create 1 million high-tech jobs, and we think give the economy about $100 million dividend, $100 billion dividend. That's a lot of incentive for the citizens to say, wait a minute, I don't want this power system anymore.
Peter,
I want something that is rewarded for efficiency.
Thomas, I could not possibly agree with you more, and I don't know that Boone would agree.
Oh yeah, I agree.
mean, it's about as rational as it gets. Peter Diamandis, founder of the X Prize Foundation, you are the leader in the concept of creating incentive for innovative solutions. You heard the conversation we're having, Peter. Can the X Prize solve any or all of it?
I believe in ingenuity and innovation and the American way. You know, basically the entrepreneurs be able to go and come up with new and novel ideas. If you remember that the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. The problem is in large government systems and large corporations, we are cautious about trying out crazy ideas. So what we do at the X Prize, we have one large competition and partnership with the Department of Energy, with Progressive, called the Progressive Insurance Automotive X Prize, for a new generation of super efficient cars. These are cars that are fast, affordable, safe, and by the way, they do over 100 miles per gallon, or its energy equivalent. And then we're now working with our partner Cisco to look at where can X Prizes really bring about fundamental breakthroughs. You know, we're very young as a species technologically. And the technology we're using to generate energy is, 100, 200 years old. There's lots of potential breakthroughs in solar and wind and nuclear and fusion, all kinds of different. And can we incentivize the brilliant people around the planet, especially here in the U.S., to come up and demonstrate that? And we've got to fundamentally make the cost of alternative energy cheaper than coal, cheaper than oil, so that it's a no-brainer to switch. That's what we have to focus on.
Yes, listen, gentlemen, thank you. Last word to you, Boone.
Yeah, what I hear is all good, but what's going to happen and what you're causing and others are, the energy discussion is now starting to roll. That's good, because it needs to roll. But the reason we're in the jam that we're in is because we've always had cheap oil.
And is the reason we have cheap oil, though, because the government subsidizes it? In other words, when I fill my car, am I really looking at the real cost of that gasoline?
Yes,
or am I looking at an artificial cost between tax code and the wars and all this nonsense?
No, you're looking at the real cost. But what it is, we don't tax gasoline. Now, I know this is
I think we should tax it. So you're,
yeah, but around the world, they tax.
Yeah.
But here, and it's just like Mullally said over there at Ford yesterday, he said, the people have $2.80 gasoline, and they're satisfied with it. So they don't think alternative fuel. Do not think domestic fuel. But I think that I've done a good job of explaining this around the world, and that we do have to get on domestic fuel. And when we do, the security issue, Dylan, it just drives me cuckoo that you're sitting here with importing 5 million barrels of oil a day from OPEC. You're importing that from the enemy. We're paying for both sides of the war, and we are fools to continue to do this.
It's hard to sit here and say it calmly because it's so. It inspires, excuse me, so much outrage. Boone, always a pleasure.
Thanks,
thank you very much. Truly, thank you. PickensPlan.com.
PickensPlan.com. I got 1,700,000 people.
Congratulations.
Good.
We're going to need a few more.
I want 2
solve
million.
Sourcing. Let's solve efficiency too. Why are we burning? Why are you going to burn? It's like burning money in the street. You wouldn't do that.
That's right.
Wouldn't do that. Boone Pickens, Peter Diamandis, Thomas Caston. Thanks to all three of you for this conversation today. The only solution from our perspective is to restructure the energy structure. It starts with giving us all an incentive to change, and then helping that change take place. Whether it is through the X Prize, whether it's through tax policy, I don't care, quite honestly. But for example, if we raise the cost of oil and other energies to reflect the environmental and national security costs, as every other country does, by definition we would incentivize people to look for alternatives to that. Not to mention, look to boost the efficiency from 10, 20, or 30% on your car, your power grid, your house, whatever it is, to 80 or 90% like it is in Japan or in Western Europe. Think about maybe the government or a bank financing program of some kind that could help by offering loans to help people convert to efficiency, whether it's converting to natural gas filling stations for our fleet trucks on I-10 or I-80 going across the country, or whether it's the similar financing program to convert every home in this country to a new standard of efficiency, irrespective of sourcing. Those sorts of programs, which are highly achievable, would completely alter our relationship with energy in this country. We would go from consuming 4 gallons of gas for every gallon everybody else consumes, not because we use it, but because we waste it. It's crazy. Look at the Gulf of Mexico. Look at the Middle East. I want you to bring back your nagging grandmother. Turn off the lights in the room you're not in. Close the refrigerator if you're not going to get anything out of it. Inflate the tires on your car. What are you using all those plastic bags for? I'll keep going. Am I nagging you yet? You get my point. As Boone says, this must end. The culture in this country of accepting cheap energy as a political solution must end, and we, as the people, must demand our politicians stop hiding in that very easy and cheap retreat. The politicians must stand up and lead us toward efficiency by making it more costly for Americans not to be efficient. Increase the gas tax, more in line with something like it is overseas. And if you did that, watch how fast people will change their ways, how fast they will change, how fast the nagging grandma will be in the room telling you to turn the lights off. You can even give the money you collect back to the people as a dividend. Why do you want to give it to the government so they can give it to their friends? Imagine we collected it, gave it out as a dividend, and now if Boone uses a lot of energy and I don't, well, then I get basically a better payout because I'm not putting that much in. I've got an incentive now. There are some plans that approach this. Senator Maria Cantwell and Susan Collins have a version where there is a 75% pass-through on that tax, so you're not giving the money to the government. You're just creating the incentive to create the efficiency along with the sourcing. If we're going to be giving handouts, let's give them to the American people who own this land, not to special interests that are able to manipulate our political process for their own particular advance without any concern as to the future of our country. We're going to take a break. I kind of like this garage. You like this garage?
I love it.
I think I can make a TV show right in here. Stay in here the whole time.
You got a TV show.
Hey, that's right. Thank you. I forgot about that. That's good. We're right back with actor and activist Ed Begley Jr.